Hello, and welcome to the Nintendo Power Retrospectives. I'm Count Zero. We have come to the first Nintendo Power Strategy Guide, specifically the one for Super Mario Bros. 3. As I mentioned last time, I'll be focusing less on the guide itself, or, well, magazine guide, what have you, this time, and focusing more on the game. There's not a lot to talk about in the guide because, well, it's just giving maps for the game, plus some specific strategy stuff. And I'll mention the specific strategy stuff, but otherwise, I'm focusing on the game. So this episode will be shorter than usual, since I'm only talking about one game, but that's okay. I think we'll be getting more in-depth this time than we normally do with the games we discuss. With all that out of the way, let's get started. The magazine itself gives a rundown of what all the game's power-ups do, along with ways to get infinite extra lives in the game, and a complete rundown of all the rank-and-file enemies you encounter, and of course, maps of every level in the game. Gameplay-wise, Super Mario Bros. 3 takes the series back to the gameplay of the first game. Yes, the Japanese version of Super Mario Bros. 2 didn't change the gameplay up that much from the first game, instead choosing to amp up the difficulty. The US version of Super Mario Bros. 2, on the other hand, the one that was Doki Doki Panic in Japan, was a dramatic change from the first game. While the gameplay was still focused on running and jumping and navigating the environments to reach the end of the level, the way of dealing with enemies and the lack of a score that increased for defeating those enemies changed the tone of the game. Here was a situation really where there was no reward for fighting enemies, aside from bosses. You could actually go through the game and do a no-kill run, and it's just as valid a strategy. You're not missing out on points which you could then use for extra lives, than as opposed to Super Mario Bros. 1. So, with Super Mario Bros. 3, though, while again, we go back to the gameplay style of Super Mario Bros. 1, it still tweaks the hell out of it. In Super Mario Bros. 1, the only ways to gain extra lives was through hitting certain score thresholds, or getting 100 coins, or finding the items as power-ups in levels, or, well, jumping on a turtle shell repeatedly a certain number of times, or jumping on a certain number of enemies in a row to get those extra lives. Super Mario Bros. 3, on the other hand, adds a whole bunch of new ways to get extra lives, whether through slot machines in the various worlds, or through the memory game, where occasionally the memory boards will have one-up items in there, or, and here's the biggie, through the cards collected at the end of each level. Depending on what cards you get in combination, you will get a different number of extra lives. However, no matter what, once you get 3 cards, you will get 1 extra life, and this changes everything. So, never mind the coins, but even if you took all that out of there, you are always getting an extra life every 3 levels. And so this really changes as far as how the game handles lives and how the difficulty is related to how many lives you have before you get a game over and have to start the world over, more or less. This really changes how far you can get into the game before the continue screen comes up. So that is the first big shift. The second one is that the player has options to store power-ups. In Super Mario Bros. 1, if you died on a level, when you came back and you started over, you started as Small Mario. And depending on how far you got in the level and the level you were on, this could be a major setback, because some levels you need to have that extra hit available as Big Mario, or you need to have the ability to break blocks as Big Mario in order to get through the optimum path. On the other hand, with Super Mario Bros. 3, you can store power-ups, so you can theoretically hang on to a Raccoon Mario or a Big Mario or whatever, so that if you die on a level, you can get back to the whatever power-up that you need or think you need for your playstyle to get through the game in the best way, or whatever is the best way for you. This is helped even more by the memory game I mentioned earlier. Depending on what items you match in this memory game, you will get that power-up or collection of coins or what have you. So this means that depending on how well you fare in those games, you will generally have a stockpile of items built up. This is further sort of supplemented by the fact that there are rooms in each level where Toad will have 3 boxes, and you can select one item from the boxes, or one box which each has an item, and that item will enter your stockpile. So these are ways to always make sure there's like at least 1 or 2 items in your stockpile every few levels, just in case you die. You have a way of getting back up to a version of Mario that will help you in whatever level you want. Not all of these are totally useful. One of the items they have in there is a invincibility star, and that works fairly well at the start of each level. It gives you a chance to get a little further in, but if it's a level where, for example, you'll do better as Raccoon Mario or something like that, then unless that level has a Raccoon Mario on there, you're still kind of in trouble. But still, it works fairly well. The third dramatic change is the world map. Specifically, there is a world map. Mario Bros. 1 and Mario Bros. 2 were both very linear. You went through World 1-1, 1-2, 1-3, 1-4, until you hit the end of that world, you moved on to the next. With Super Mario Bros. 3, though, there are multiple paths you can select, and you can very easily skip levels if you want to. Now, the cards system means that you get incentive not to skip those levels, in addition to abilities to collect other extra lives and gather more coins. But the option is there. Further, once you complete a level, or rather, once you complete the mid-world level, which is like the castle, which is where you find a mid-boss, though some worlds have more castles than others, that castle is permanently destroyed, and it also will open up a shortcut through the level. When you continue, you go back to the beginning, and all the levels you've beaten before are closed again, or something similar. But that path that you opened with the castle is still there. So you can kind of get back to approximately where you were beforehand, again, even if you die and are forced to continue. And even better, all the items you had in storage are still there. So again, you're forced to start over. You are once again back to Small Mario, but if you have a Super Mushroom in storage, if you have a Raccoon Leaf in storage, or what have you, you can get back to where you want to be, which is excellent, and does a really good job of just completely changing how you play Super Mario Bros. While retaining the classic way of playing Super Mario Bros. If you played Mario Bros. 1, you can hop in here and basically pick up exactly where you left off, if you will, in terms of the gameplay evolution, and find everything familiar, while still having a whole bunch of new things and new gameplay mechanics that you can learn, which makes the game interesting and gives more reason to keep coming back to the game. All in all, Super Mario Bros. 3 is the best Mario game we've come across thus far. The game plays excellently, and all of the new innovations only serve to make the game better. That said, it's also the longest game in the series. Frankly, I'd actually recommend not playing this on the NES. Well, it sounds kind of silly, but I actually recommend instead playing one of the compilation versions of it, in terms of as the versions in Super Mario All-Stars for the Super Nintendo or for the version on the Wii. These versions of the game give you an option to save your game and come back to it later. It's definitely something I'd recommend, because there's just so much material there to do. There's so many levels, and with enough of time to learn how to play it, or rather to learn how to navigate the levels and all the strategies you need and that sort of thing, that honestly, it's definitely a game where if I were playing it, I prefer to play it over multiple sittings rather than having to start over from the beginning each time. So yeah, that's the main thing, is get this compilation, or since it is available on the Wii Virtual Console, getting it, I believe it's available on the Wii Virtual Console. If not, I'll correct myself in the caption. I'd recommend getting it that way. So, with all that said, next issue, we're going to wrap up Nintendo Power's second year, and I'll see you then.